What's up, my juice lovers? Welcome to the Cold Pressed Truth. This is Charlie Wetlaufer. Today, we're going to be going over one of my favorite topics, which is how much to charge for items on your juice bar menu. Mainly focused on juice, but in general, we're going to be talking about pricing. Why do I love pricing so much? It's just so interesting. I mean, pricing, it's so hard to know how much to charge for things and how much people are willing to pay and how people are going to react to price changes and what your competitors are doing. There's so much to think about. So pricing is not easy in any industry. There's actually even these consulting groups that will come to your business and charge you $100,000 to tell you how much to charge for something. You know, obviously a juice bar would never be using one of those services, but they work for manufacturing companies and bigger industries like that. There's a lot to think about, and there's no straightforward, easy answer. That's why I like this topic so much. And my consulting team at Good Nature has created literally hundreds of unique juice bar menus, profitable menus, and helped our clients decide how much to charge for each item on their menu. So we do have a lot of experience in this area. And by the way, if you'd like help creating your custom juice bar menu, head over to our website at goodnature.com. Click on resources and go to consulting. And there you can meet our dream team, as I like to call them, Chef Ari and Olivia Esquivel. And you can get a free 30-minute consultation. Just put in your phone number and name and email, and you can get a free 30-minute call with our consultants for no charge, just to talk about your juice business and any questions you might have initially. And then from there, you can decide if you'd like to work together on a more professional basis. So I've come up with sort of a little guide on how to decide how to price your juice and other menus on your juice bar menu. So let's take a look. Number one, know your cost of goods sold, also called COGS. Know your COGS. Before you go any further, you need to figure out your costs. If you don't know your costs, you need to figure out how to get them. Otherwise, you're just sort of like making up prices and it doesn't make any sense at all. So, your cost for a bottle of juice will have two main components, right? You're going to have your food cost, which is literally just the cost of the ingredients. So if there's apple, carrot, ginger, and lemon in a juice recipe, that's your food cost. It doesn't include the packaging. It doesn't include the labor. It doesn't include the label. It doesn't include your utilities or anything like that. It's just the food cost. And you might say, but what about the amount I'm paying someone to make the juice? Yes, that matters, but not in food cost. Food cost is only the food, okay? That's the first most important thing you need to know. If you don't know your food cost, you can't possibly know your total cost. So figure out your food cost. And as I say in the article here, your food cost should be between 20 to 30% of the price of the juice. So for a regular juice bar where you're selling direct to your customer, you can get away with as high as a 30% food cost. But if you're, for example, a wholesale business and you're selling to grocery stores, then your food cost needs to be even lower than the final price that the grocery store is selling it for. But this topic is more based on juice bars. So what does that mean? If your food cost should be 20 to 30% of the juice, that means if your target price is $10 for a bottle of juice, the ingredients inside it should not cost more than $3. You should target $2 if possible. If you'd like to learn more, I do have another article on calculating food costs on our blog. Just click the little search icon at the top of our website and search for food costs and you'll find it. All right, the second major component in a cost of a bottle of juice is the packaging. So the bottle. Are you using plastic bottles or glass bottles? By the way, if you guys want bottles, again, go to goodnature.com. Click in the marketplace menu at the top. And we do have the most popular plastic cold pressed juice bottles on our site. And we also have really nice premium glass bottles coming very soon, landing in our warehouse very soon. So whether plastic or glass, head over to goodnature.com and go to the marketplace there. All right, so packaging. So you might spend, if it's a plastic bottle, you might spend 50 or 75 cents on a bottle. If it's a glass bottle, it might be $1, $1.50, $2, depending on, you know, the kind of quality and how many you're buying at the same time. And then the label is very depending on how many you're buying. If you're getting them printed, you know, in bulk, it can be less than 10 cents each. You might have one label, you might have two. So it really just all depends. But basically, with these two costs combined, your packaging and your food costs, you should still try to get like minimum 40% margin. So that means all of it together shouldn't cost more than $6. And if it costs more than that, it's going to be hard to make any money at all. Really, your margin should be more towards a 50, 60% or more. So meaning everything combined, food costs and packaging shouldn't be more than, you know, $4. And you might say, well, what about the labor costs? What about the people I'm paying to make the juice? Yes, labor cost matters, but it becomes very difficult to manage your business if you're combining everything into one bucket, right? And we talk about this in a recent episode of the Good Nature Radio, the Good Nature podcast. So you can check that out on YouTube. Just search Good Nature Radio. I also embedded it in the article here. Olivia is very passionate about not including labor costs when you're looking at your profit margin for juice, because it just gets too difficult. You should really be looking at them separate. First, make sure the juice itself is profitable, right? Like the product you're selling is profitable. Then focus on the labor. Like, how do we get maximum productivity out of every hour of labor? And it's not always just like make them work harder. You know, a lot of times it's what else can they be doing in addition to making juice while they're on the clock? Can they take an hour and can they restock a grab and go cooler with some other items? Can you be making some energy balls or good granola bars? Or can you be making some juice shots, you know, which also have a very high profit margin? So there's other things you can be doing with your labor to make it more efficient. And also like how you're scheduling your labor, and all that is very useful to look at separately. And then you might also say, well, what about your overhead, right? So overhead is what the technical term is, like fixed costs, right? Like what about your utilities and your rent and your internet bill and your manager's salary? Basically, those are all your fixed costs, as opposed to variable costs, which change. Variable costs change depending on how much juice you make, and fixed costs stay the same no matter how much juice you make. And fixed costs have to be separate no matter what. I don't care what you say or why you think they should be included. They should definitely not. And here's why. Let's say you manage your, let's say you're running a juice bar, and today, and let's say all of your fixed costs overheads cost you $300 a day on your juice bar, okay? I have no idea if that's realistic. I just kind of picked a number out of my head. And today you make 300 bottles of juice. You say, well, that's easy. Now there's $1 of labor in each bottle of juice. So that's my labor cost, $1 per bottle. Okay. Tomorrow, what if you only make one bottle of juice, but then the employee says they feel sick and they go home? Now, are you going to say that because your fixed costs are still $300, that bottle of juice costs you $300? So now you have to charge $305 to make profit? No, that's ridiculous. You just can't look at it that way, right? So your fixed costs stay the same whether you make 1,000 bottles of juice a day or 0. So those need to be looked at separately and managed separately. Like, can we negotiate a better rent? Can we lower our internet bill? Can we have our manager just come in part-time instead of full-time? Like all that stuff you can look at separately at those monthly recurring costs. Like, can we reduce our software subscription costs? Like all those things should absolutely not be included while you're calculating your cost of goods for your juice. Otherwise your business just becomes impossible to manage. Okay, so that was all a long way of saying know your cost of goods, right? Step 2, calculate the minimum price. So if we're targeting a 40 or 60% gross profit margin per bottle, and we know our cost, then now we can calculate our minimum price, right? By knowing our cost. And I put the formula in here. It's basically like you just take your cost of goods, so your food cost plus packaging cost, then divide it by 1 minus the required margin. So what does that mean? So let's say your food cost is $2 and your packaging cost is $1.50. What's your total cost of goods there? $3.50, right? Okay. And now let's say for your business, you need a 50% profit margin. So it's 1 minus 0.5. And then plug that into your calculator, your spreadsheet. It gives you a $7 minimum price. So that means if your cost of goods is $3.50, $7 is the minimum to be charging to make your target margin of 50%. Now, if you have a higher target margin of 70%, then that price is going to end up being higher, okay? Of your minimum price. And so now you know you have to price it at $7 on your menu to hit your minimum profit margin. Doesn't mean you can't price it higher. You can decide to charge $7.50 or $8, you know, if you think it makes sense, but you absolutely can't charge less than that. Now, you could say, well, my overall target profit margin for my whole menu is 50%. This item's only 40%, but I have this other popular item that's 60%, so it offsets. That's totally fine. You can do an average if you want. But basically, it's probably easier if you just set it per item. Step 3, don't price everything the same. So this is a weird thing we see lots of juice bars doing, wherein they like to just say all juices are $10. And I understand that's easy. And I understand there's some other larger juice companies that do similar stuff, like Pressed Juicery. I think they charge either all $9 or $10 depending on the juice. It's like a mix of either 9 or 10, which is still a little bit of a range, but definitely don't make everything the same. Why not? Well, there's a couple major reasons. Number one, you want to build trust in your customers, right? And if they walk into your juice bar, maybe they're looking at your website if you're a juice delivery company, and they see a green juice that has cucumber, ginger, celery, kale in it, and spinach, you know, more expensive items, and it's $10. Then you have a lemonade that's obviously mostly water, right? It's lemon and water and maybe some sweetener like agave nectar or something. And that's $10. You immediately lose credibility with your customer. They feel like you're ripping them off. Why would they pay $10 for water? Yeah, it's a good point. Like, it does feel very scammy. So you shouldn't do that. Another good reason, and maybe an even better reason, is because if you have a range, let's say your prices range from $6 to $12, right? $6 for your like lemon water, $12 for your cashew milk. Now you can say cold pressed juice starting at $6. You can advertise lower pricing, and that's really useful. If you're a juice bar, you have a sign up front to say cold pressed juice starting at $6, or on your website, or you're advertising on Facebook like cold pressed juice starting at $6. That's great. You know, that's a really good reason to have some lower priced items. And finally, the third reason is it gives you flexibility to have some really expensive items, right? Like if you're bound by only charging $10 for everything, now you can't have like a really premium nut milk that has cashew and turmeric in it because your cost would be too high. So you can't put that on the menu anymore because you're like, oh, well, I can't charge $10 for this. I'd be losing money. So now you can just have a range. You can say, okay, this is $12, this is $10, this is $8, this is $5, whatever. So definitely have a range of prices. You can think about it like a restaurant. Like, what if you went into a restaurant and a side of French fries was the same price as a entree, right? You say that doesn't make sense. You're like, well, we just price everything the same. It's like, well, it depends on the cost of the food. Like, prices on menus depend on the cost of the food, period. And juice bar is no different. You're running a restaurant. Finally, my last tip here, check costs regularly. So we went over calculating your food costs, calculating your minimum price, and not pricing everything the same. And finally, check costs regularly. So after you decide how much you want to charge for each item, definitely make sure you're checking in on your costs, whether you're doing it every week or every 2 weeks. Once a month might not be enough because things change kind of frequently, but basically prices change a lot depending on seasonality and demand, right? Like if we've all seen the price of celery go through the celery boom, and then seasonality changes a lot. Also some other things change a lot depending on the season. Apples even fluctuate, you know, during apple season, they're a lot cheaper. So you want to make sure that when you calculate your minimum price, that a month later, you're still making money on that item. If you're not making money on an item, when you go back and look, either you need to pull it off the menu, tell people it's out of stock, or raise the price, period. Don't just be like, oh, well, we'll just like lose money on it until the costs come back down. Absolutely not. You're running a business. You're not running a charity. Unless you are running a charity, then maybe that's fine. But even charities need to make money, right? So check costs regularly. And I guess my last tip would be, there is a strong temptation to just look at what other people are charging and set your prices based on the competition. And I would say it's important to know what the competition is doing locally, but make sure you're not just setting prices because that's what other people charge. Like, you need to know your costs. It just all goes back to cost, right? Like if you see somebody charging $10 for a cashew milk, so you make yours $10, you might not be making money on that. You know, it depends. Maybe they use more water in their cashew milk than you do. You have no idea. So it's good to look at competition as like a more like what the market can bear locally, maybe. But as far as setting prices, don't just set it where your competitors are setting it. Set it based on your cost. And if you look at the minimum price and it's too high, like let's say you have a green juice, your minimum price comes out to like $14, you need to change the recipe. Take some things out, substitute something, you know, maybe use less of the expensive items, a little more of the cheaper items, or charge $14 for it. You know, that's why you have that formula in the first place. So that's my guide on how to set prices for your juice bar. Now, if you need help, don't be shy. Head over to goodnature.com, hit up our consulting page, and schedule that free consultation. See you guys next time. Peace, love, juice.